Good evening. The great freeze-up hit many parts of the West, and there's more on the way. It caused traffic chaos this morning. Some people were up to 4 hours late for work, others never made it. And there's been plenty of skids and bumps on the road.
Well, after a chaotic day, the situation's now improving all the time, but there are still many block roads, and there's a warning of fog and ice tonight. Well, let's quickly look at the situation on the roads. And first, the motorways. Speed restrictions are still in force on the M4 and M5, down to 30 miles an hour in places. And the Severn Bridge has a 20-mile-an-hour restriction because of ice. In the counties, Bristol and Avon, the only roads still closed are the A46 between Bath and Stroud, and the main roads between Dalting and Pensford. Other roads passable with care. In Wiltshire, all roads are now passable with care. In Gloucestershire, the main road through Tumble Hill, Crickley and the main Chepstow route are closed to heavy lorries. Other roads are clear. In Somerset now, all major roads are clear, but it's becoming very foggy in the south of the county. On Exmoor, though, many minor roads are still blocked. And finally, down to Dorset, all main roads clear. In fact, it's hardly snowed there at all. Richard?
Well, I think we all had a bit of a surprise when we looked out of our windows for the first time this morning, and my thanks to the gentlemen who helped give me a push this morning. Well, the worst hit area has been Gloucestershire, which this morning was in the grip of what's being described as the worst winter conditions for many years. In the Forest of Dean, most main roads were impassable.
It's here in the Forest of Dean that the real force of last night's blizzard has been felt. Most villages were cut off this morning, but they've now been freed. All that is, except for this village here at Pludds. It's now gone 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're still waiting for the bulldozers to get through. The weathermen say it's the worst pre-Christmas snow for 30 years. Dozens of roads in the Forest of Dean are still cut off tonight, but the village itself was freed a short while ago. In other cut-off villages, snow wardens were called out to run emergency self-help schemes. Other people rigged up sledges to transport essential goods. So where are you going with this on the sledge?
Down to Brierley, down the service station. Get it filled back up. It's an empty.
What's heating been like?
Oh, terrible. Yeah.
Why is it that lads tends to get cut off so often?
Well, I don't know, it's just wide open spaces, I suppose. But, you know, if we get bad snow every year, it's usually cut off for a few days.
St Breville's was another area badly hit, picturesque to look at, but causing all sorts of problems for the locals. The roads here were passable only with great caution, and most people were advised to travel only if it was absolutely necessary. Overall, Gloucestershire was badly hit. Dozens of schools were closed down for the day. Most bus services were cancelled, even in the urban areas. The Gloucestershire ambulance service was abandoned. Only emergency calls were dealt with. Even phone lines were affected. The sheer weight of snow brought many cables down, and British Telecom appealed to subscribers not to make calls unless they were vital, because the exchanges couldn't cope. Because so few staff could make their way through the appalling conditions, shops and offices throughout the county opened late, or in many cases not at all. Among the roads closed throughout the day were the A40, the A46, the A429 and the A4136. Gritting vans and snow-clearing gangs worked flat out, but the County Council said because of spending cuts, manning levels were down on previous years, and their task was an uphill one. More than 6 inches of snow fell overnight, on top of the already frozen snow from earlier in the week, and the weathermen say we can expect more of the same over the weekend.
We'll have a look at how other areas were affected by the weather in a moment, but first to look at other news stories of the day. Well, nurses in the West today threatened to take industrial action unless the government scraps its 4% pay limit. 200 nurses met in Bristol last night and formed an action committee to fight for better wages, and they plan to lobby local MPs for their support. Well, the nurses' take-home pay is as little as £54 a week. They say they won't go on strike but will ban overtime if necessary. They want the whole wage structure reviewed and are holding a rally in London next month to persuade the government to change its mind. More than 70% of the 5,000 manual workers at the Rolls-Royce factory near Bristol turned up for work today, despite a management attempt to close down for the day. Rolls-Royce ordered the workers to stay at home until a dispute over working hours is settled. They were warned if they turned up for work, they wouldn't be paid. Well, meanwhile, 1,700 engineers at the Patchway factory have been suspended because of a strike by 19 technicians over pay.
Well, now back to the weather story. And here in Bristol, thousands of people were late for work as huge jams built up, caused in many cases by stranded cars and lorries. Early morning buses were cancelled, although services started again late in the day. And tonight, the council say they'll be standing by with a major road gritting operation if there's more snow and ice.
Bristol looked like a scene from a Christmas card today, but most people were too busy to notice. They were up and about early, clearing pavements and trying to get their cars started. Some motorists came to grief early, coming to an unfortunate stop, and some just gave up. Despite traffic travelling at a snail's pace in the city, the snow was still too much for some drivers, who, however hard they tried, couldn't help bumping into vehicles that somehow got in their way. Bristol City's council's stockpile of salt at Hartcliffe was quickly shared round 3 other collecting areas in the city. Lorry loads of salt were dumped on city roads throughout the night and today, but unfortunately, to start with, the salt was buried by the snow. This is one of 4 places in Bristol where rock salt is stockpiled to keep the roads clear of snow. Altogether, the City Council has a stockpile of 6,000 tonnes of this salt, but already today, 600 tonnes were used. So if it goes on snowing at this rate, it'll only last for 10 days. The council's entire fleet of 38 gritting lorries were on the roads, and 150 council employees worked from early morning to clear the roads and keep them that way. But many people said the council didn't act quickly enough.
Well, that's not true, really. I mean, we went on every major road in Bristol last night. We gritted them once, and early this morning, at somewhere around 4:30, we were doing a double round. I mean, the snow came down very, very fast, and the salt didn't melt the snow, so we were out again.
But traffic was piled up on most of the roads coming into Bristol today.
Just one of those unforeseen things. Can I say that I'm not responsible for what happens outside of Bristol, but as I gather that in Bristol, that most of the major roads were clear.
If the snow continues tonight, how prepared are you?
Oh, every man, Jack, is on the ball at the present moment. There's 150 men out at the present moment, and we'll have 150 men out tonight.
All the main roads were gritted, and later today the council started gritting the side roads. Snow ploughs were working in conjunction with the gritting lorries. Bristol buses were badly hit by the snowfall. They were on the roads early but soon fell behind schedule when traffic built up in the city. Hundreds of people queued for buses, but many didn't make work at all. Although buses weren't called back to their depots, there was a time when not a single one was moving in Bristol.
What happened was that at about 7 o'clock this morning, all our Bristol city services got completely jammed up. Most of the main roads in and out of Bristol were blocked either with articulated lorries or cars that had slewed across the road, and things ground almost to a halt at one stage this morning.
Road conditions became so treacherous later in the day that the police cancelled their motorcycle patrols and put extra panda cars on the roads instead. They warned motorists to be extra careful tonight when temperatures are expected to drop below freezing.
Well, I can confirm now that that is happening. The temperatures are dropping and conditions are deteriorating. We've just heard, in fact, that the Severn Bridge has been completely closed now to traffic because of ice on the bridge. Well, earlier in the day, Somerset was the only county in our area to escape the worst of the snow. Wiltshire was badly hit, and many of the villages around Bristol too. At East Harttree, the villagers lost their electricity supply for a time.
This has been a picture all over the West Country today. While the bulldozers and gritters had been out early clearing the main roads, here on the foot of the Mendips, this is the sort of road people have to use. And And quite frankly, there's no point in trying to drive along here. I've left my car down the bottom there, and I'm not the only one. Many people who live here commute to Bristol, and they've decided simply to stay at home.
East Harptree, 15 miles from Bristol, is the sort of village to be hit hard when the snow comes. There's high ground all around, and most of the roads in the area were blocked for several hours this morning. Many people simply turned up the central heating and stayed in. Others tried to get to work and paid the penalty. Much of village life came to a standstill. The school was closed because none of the teachers could get in from outlying areas. So the children, like thousands of others in the West, had an unscheduled day off. One man with the spirit of the Pony Express was the local butcher. When his van couldn't get up Smitham Hill, he simply improvised in true British fashion.
This is a hard way to do it, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes.
Got no choice, though.
It's the only way I can get up here, you see.
Have you tried to get up with the van?
Oh, yes. Yes, no chance. Yes, I got to go right to the top.
Keep you fit anyway.
Makes you glow a bit. Yes.
The meat must get through then.
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, we've been doing this for some nearly 50 years now.
So it's no problem to you then?
Well, we're used to it anyway.
To add to the chaos in East Harptree, there was a power cut. The village pub was the only place where hot drinks could be guaranteed, and it became the emergency headquarters until power was restored.
Well, the electricity's been off since about 6:20, so coming up to 3 hours now.
I see you've been getting the old Dunkirk spirit going.
Yes, we had lots of digging out to do, and as there's no electricity, of course there's no heating of any description or cooking facilities for the rest of the village. So as we have Calagas tanks, we've provided all the hot drinks this morning before the people went to work or tried to get to work.
People out in the wilds had better get used to this sort of thing. More snow and freezing fog are forecast for some parts of the West, and it looks as if many of us could be in for a long, hard winter.
In Wiltshire, 4 inches of snow fell overnight, and the council's snowplows were out early on the main roads. But they couldn't clear them all. 4 major routes were still blocked at midday, including the main A4 at Box Hill. Drivers were urged by police to stay off the roads. Some were passable, but many cars, including this one at Dunkirk Hill near Devizes, became stuck. And during the morning, more and more roads, particularly the hills, became congested with stranded cars. The hills around Marlborough were badly affected, and it meant that the town itself was difficult to reach. School buses couldn't get through, and many teachers were cut off, so for most children it was a day off school. In Marlborough itself, all but one school was closed, and that one, St Mary's Infants, stayed open for the morning only. Staff at Bristol's Lulsgate Airport were out early sweeping the runways, and they kept them clear throughout the day. But despite their efforts, no planes could take off because the cloud base was too low. One of the few affected areas in Somerset was Exmoor. 6 inches of snow fell, roads around Exford and Simmonsbath were closed, several other villages were cut off, though Taunton, Bridgewater and other towns below the Mendip Hills were hardly affected.
Yes, quite amazing that. Normally, of course, it seems that Somerset is the first area to be hit by the bad winter weather.